Hey everyone, we'll get started here in a second, just giving people a few minutes to come on in. But hope everyone's doing well. All right.
My apologies, Naveen. I'm a little late with the posting channels, so probably people are a little behind.
Oh, it's okay. We'll wait another minute and then we'll start. All right, we'll get started here. Welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Tari Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for everyone participating in the Tari community. So we're gonna dive right in here actually with a sharp question from our very own Kinkajou. Kinkajou asked, with all the bugs recently, notably Zcash and Mythos released today, I'm curious if there's any plans for formal review, maybe hiring an auditor like Trail of Bits of the Tari code base to ensure there are no bugs, inflation or otherwise, especially due to the difficulty of auditing Tari supply. So a couple things about that is that first of all, like Zcash was audited, like multiple times, and the bugs still existed, or the bug still existed. So auditors are not a panacea. Like they are very valuable because they're really talented people, but they're human beings and they make mistakes even with their like processes. So I think like the right thing to do here is just acknowledge that AI models are just going to get better and better and better. And we can all project, well, where do we think we're going to be by the end of the year versus where we are today? And I think as a community, we just regularly point models at the Tari code base together and fix bugs. I'm not convinced. I think actually the role of auditors is going to decline because there's no way an auditor can actually review a code base in detail at the level that they need to. I mean, we've had several very large, issues in the industry, right? Like we have the Zcash thing, which is an issue. And look, there's no shade here against Zcash, right? Like they hired amazing auditors, they've done amazing things. Like I don't agree with, optional privacy by default. That's like a core disagreement that at least I have with like Zcash. But I'm not here to like fault their, their, auditing practices or any of that stuff. Like I think they've done very good work there, and I think the world is changing. I think we just like regularly turn our models, towards Tari. I think we have. Bounties and Tari tokens that we, provide to the community for their service on this regard, and we just like work really hard to just make it better and better and better. I think that's like the best solution. I actually think that over the next 12 months, the role of an auditor will probably like change substantially because there's no way an auditor is going to compete with like Mythos or in whatever Mythos V1. Well, what is Mythos V2? What is Mythos V3? Like we're not going to have Mythos V1 be the pioneering model over the next 6 months. We all know that's just not true. There's going to be Mythos 1.1 and 1.2, 1.3. We might be sitting at Mythos 1.3 by the end of the year. That's 20% better at finding vulnerabilities and bugs. So really the key is going to be being like hyper regular about it, being super focused, and I think it should be a priority for the council to prioritize regularly evaluating the Tari code base with these models. I think that should just be like a priority, and it should be a priority of the whole community. Like we're all, it's a tradition in the Tari community to just like battle test Tari, like all the time. And I think that's the best way for us to move forward here together and ensure that Tari is secure. So that's my personal opinion on that front. Fox, what do you think about that?
Well, what's been really interesting is watching kind of, as a software developer, watching people talk about Mythos and what it's able to do and similar models. And the thing that I've noticed is a consistent thread through them is that they're not beyond the technique ability of humans. Humans usually are able to do things that the models aren't able to do. But one thing that the models are able to do is not get bored. And really, a lot of security exploits that we're finding now with these models are things that you could find if you were willing to spend hours staring at a specific area of code. But usually, what interests a security researcher is they're looking at the code and they see something and they say, "Ah, that smells a little wrong," and they start following a path down until they figure it out. But sometimes the smell is so faint that a security researcher isn't going to catch that little thing, and it's they have bigger fish to fry when the larger code base is there. Where are the more likely things that someone's going to find? Well, you know, now we have machines that never get bored. They can just keep on looking at something until they find the faintest scent of it. And that's really interesting from a perspective of like, okay, well, how do you secure things now? And I think that probably AI scanning is going to be fairly important for a lot of projects to get these bugs that would otherwise not be found. And I think it's a question of, okay, how much do we want to? I think a project like Tari especially needs to think about using AI tools in this particular area, just because it's going to be the kind of project where the benefit to exploiting it is so high. I think other projects that might be considering LLM-based scanning might not want to spend that kind of money on it because they wouldn't want to spend that kind of money on any other kind of auditing in the same degree either. But on this one in particular, I think it's pretty important.
I completely agree, and I think that's a very good read on human nature and and the ability for the other thing that you can do with models is you can instigate a swarm of them. It's like not only will they keep going, like essentially as long as you have tokens to spend, but you can like have a swarm of them, and all approaching it with like different prompts, different angles, different perspectives. And that is another part of this equation that I think is like interesting. So, and I think that just needs to be again something that like the council puts together some processes around this, and we just like do it. We just like do it together as a group on a regular basis, and we're all poking holes in Tari like constantly and fixing them. There's no such thing as bug-free software. Like that just doesn't exist. So the best thing to do is just make it a part of the culture. Like this is the part of the culture that we have at Tari, and that part of our culture serves the greater good for Tari as a whole. So that's sort of
Yeah.
my view there.
Add
I'd
one
also say
thing.
like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that Tari is built differently from Zcash, and its supply is easy for anyone to calculate. On Mimblewimble, it's just some of the outputs minus the inputs must balance. So Tari is always based on old, simple math. It doesn't rely so heavily on these very obscure, esoteric forms of privacy that are always prone to auditing problems because no one can understand them. So I just think it's worth calling that out too.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. That's a very very good point. That certainly helps. That's helpful, helpful in our world. Um, Yeah, answering another question from Magic Team 999 on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Is the L2 expected to be released this year? The answer is yes. The answer is 100% yes. We have full expectation that the L2 will be released this year. That's obviously a priority for contributors. Want to give a huge shout out to Stan. I mean, Stan's just busting his tail on this, made a lot of progress on it, and so that is 100% our priority as a group, and I think that should be an expectation of the Tari community that the L2 does ship this year. So thank you for your question. All right, let's continue on here. So speaking of the oodle, Stan has opened 3 PRs this week. One is adding like variable substate reads. So now it all comes down to like how the indexer works, and ensuring that it works like in the way that we all want it to. Um, and then just fixing bugs related to like the transaction pool and how that works. Um, we're also in touch with Braille, which is the issuer of the Tari stablecoin, that has agreed to issue a stablecoin on Tari. So they're making progress on their front as well. So that's also really positive. Um, let's see. Sphere is continuing to improve L1. So he worked on some node stability items. this week, and we're continuing to improve the bridge. So Martins, who's another contributor, was fixing some issues on the bridge this week. There's that will go out later this week or next week. Let's see. Another thing that's happening is there was an issue with Lucky Pool, but I think that's going to be fixed. Hopefully today. Their node was unsynced for some period of time. That's something that is happening behind the scenes within the community as well. Let's talk about moderation. So this is another thing that is a change in the community. We've kind of moved away from the idea of like paid moderation, primarily because I'm not sure that it's the right way for moderation to happen. I want to give a huge shout out to Simon. Simon's been working really hard on our like bot infrastructure. And I know there was a lapse, over the last couple days. There was like, some not so good material posted in the Tari Telegram chat. But I know we've recovered from that. I want to give a huge shout out to the whole community for calling that out. And I think we're learning and Simon's bots are improving, but this is like the perfect use case for bots. Like this is what bots are for. We should be an AI forward community and acknowledge when there are things that we should have people doing within the community and acknowledge when there are things that like bots can do. And I think moderation is a really good example of, where bots are like, the right tool to use for the job. That's
I think I've lost Naveen. Can anyone else hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like a screeching sound and then it went dead there, so maybe he's having trouble with his mic. Yeah, just while we're waiting for Naveen to get back on there, just a comment on that front. I was initially kind of skeptical on some of the bot moderations because of the stuff that went through, but I've been impressed as I've been shown some of the back-end details of a little bit of how the moderation system is working, what messages it has been clearing. I do think it's still helpful to have a couple of humans that can, catch when the bot somehow manages to let something slip through. But I think the focus on trying to get a bunch of paid mods on is probably not the best focus. But one thing that could be done is, having someone who, if they are already a community member that's well known and has the ability to make those changes and clear something out, that's good. But also, if we find that there is someone who needs to spend a little bit more time on it, that is a great candidacy for a core contributor position, rather than specifically a paid position. Because after a while, we're like, okay, do we pay for every single thing that someone helps with in the Tari community? Probably not. That would be unsustainable. But there is a way to start gaining like influence and privilege within the community through the core contributor program, and I think that's a good place to do that. See if Naveen's able to get back in a minute or so. Otherwise, I think we did have an agenda item if we want to go ahead and start on that.
Yeah, I'm not hearing from him. So our agenda item was to discuss Tari improvement proposals.
Yes, and I
Is that
believe
the one?
the
Is that
idea
the
was
one that was
to
on your
open the
mind,
floor.
Fox?
Yes, and I believe the idea was to open the floor for people to talk about the
Yes, like I
improved
have like
proposals that they'd like to see.
17 or maybe 170. So I should shut up, probably.
Oh,
I
Naveen's back, I think. Maybe? Unmuted, but not speaking, so maybe not quite yet. 170 proposed improvement proposals?
well, no, I think maybe I have a dozen, but I think everyone else should go first. Hopefully, we'll run out of time before we get to me. Who was up for one? Naveen has
You want
finally dropped, which means he might come back.
okay. Um, yeah, if you are interested in talking about your Atari improvement proposal idea, go ahead and request to speak or mention it in the chat
I think Naveen is
if
back.
you're on YouTube. Oh, Naveen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, I kind of got rugged there. I apologize. Um, okay, where were we here? Sorry, you guys carried on the conversation, so catch
We
me up.
moved
Where
on to
where?
the agenda item of the Atari improvement proposals that people have in mind.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's talk about that.
So I was boasting I have a dozen, but I'm going to stay quiet for others to speak.
Well, anyone is welcome up, as always. This is a community space. Fox, are there any you want to discuss? Otherwise, Simon, you should go ahead with, I don't think we have time for a dozen, but I think we have time for maybe two.
No, I didn't have anything I want to discuss right now. I mean, most of the stuff I'm thinking about is, how do I start structuring like the core contributor program when we start talking about that. And so that's where my mind's been churning in the background.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so I've been thinking about, well, how do we, how to say this? So when you work on software as a company, you can build large, complicated software. But if you're a community, if you think of the Unix community, what the principles are around, for example, building for Unix, I believe there are two core principles, which is single responsibility, which is each piece of software must do one thing really well. And the second is it must play nice with other pieces of software. So I think the classic example is text streams came out of the Unix community, which every piece of software in the world, at the command line at least, understands the idea of piping something to another text stream. But as we have built software at Tari Labs over the years, we've built some very large pieces of software, and the largest one is Tari Universe, which, as we can see, I think it's been 5 weeks or more since we've had a release, and we have PRs that have backed up behind it, which is frustrating for community members. But the reality is that it is incredibly difficult to release new versions of Tara Universe because of how complex it is and how interdependent all the pieces are. So one improvement proposal, maybe it's several, is to break it up into separate applications that do one thing really well. They can each be the Electron style Tauri framework apps, but for the bridge and the wallet and mining, for example. And each of those pieces would be much easier to work on and to release. So that's one idea that I put to the floor for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean, of course, like I think, anything that feels like more monolithic in nature is going to be hard for the community in aggregate to like maintain. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing for us to endeavor to do as a community is to like make Tar Universe more modular. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think that's probably a reasonable thing for us to do. What do you think, Fox?
I mean, I think that was kind of the original idea with the tablets, right? Was that like the bridge would be kind of a separate app that would be installed into it, and so could other things that were in the wallet be installed into it. So it seems like it's kind of a return to form to me, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, I mean that, and that actually is true. The bridge is a tablet, but I think Simon, you're talking about other more core
Yeah,
components.
it would need to be actually like its own binary. I think we would need to shed maybe a sacred cow or two, which is the idea of a single desktop application that contains these things. I don't think that's very practical. And if you look at the tablet architecture, you'd realize that while it looks nice, in principle, is in fact very interdependent with all of the pieces, and it has a lot of work that needs to happen in order to make that truly modular. I think we just need to go back to basics and say we have a mining app and a which is beautiful. We have a wallet which works really really well on the desktop. We have a bridge app. Um, I don't think we even need to go to as far as that we need to have a one app that they're all inside. I don't know how we think. I mean, that's my opinion.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think
I
it would
mean,
be.
I think like, look, there are a lot of reasons why it ended up the way it did. One issue is the fact that Antivirus software doesn't play well with mining software. And so that's like one thing. You've got like the XM rig stuff. Like there's a bunch of like I think decisions that were made over the course of time. So I think it's fine. I mean, I would just the thing that I think is very important for the community to consider in all of this is, our goal is to move the project forward. And one of the things I've learned in software and developing things is that there's always like a desire to refactor things. Like there's always a desire to like take what already you have and improve upon it. But that doesn't necessarily help move things forward either. So I think like we could spend an endless amount of time like refactoring things that already exist. And in some cases that's warranted because it's important in order to move forward. We need to do that. But then on the other side of it, it's like, well, is that really going to help us like move the overall community forward, the overall project forward? And in many cases, the answer may very well be no. So especially depending on the level of effort, like if the level of effort, with Tari Universe, like to, retain, I mean, because, Simon, you were here for like the amount of time and effort we went into making Tari Universe like work well. I mean, we spent literally years working on this piece of software within Tari Labs and making it, getting it to the place where it like works pretty darn reliably, which is where it is now. The like getting it back to that place is also probably non-trivial.
It's very true. Very true indeed.
Yeah. So
Um,
anyway, do you have another one you want to discuss?
well, I was going to invite Mr. O'Brien to speak.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Hey, Naveen. Been a while. Good to talk.
Yeah. How you been, man?
Working, always working.
I know, I'm with you. Well, thanks so much for making time for us. What's
Yeah,
on your mind?
absolutely. And good to talk to Simon as well. So, obviously I've been paying attention to the project and watching everything sort of come together. Where the Unix philosophy is concerned, I tend to agree that having more modular components would allow sort of the community ecosystem to grow as far as a developer standpoint. And I think probably what we should start with are the pieces that are most problematic for support, right? Because then those like GPU mining, things like that, those pieces could potentially be handled by interested community, devs. But I would also say, the caveat there is that the Tari Universe app is beautiful. People really like it when you talk to them. And this project needs to maintain momentum, and momentum means more users, right? And potentially mainstream users. Having enough experience doing Monero mining, you mentioned Naveen XMR rig, those pieces, unless those things are under one easy installer, you tend to lose people, right? And I also would just, as a caveat, say we probably should not be too quick to move away from having a nice looking Electron application. Maybe see how some pieces go when some components get spun out and see if we can build a little bit of momentum behind them from a developer standpoint. Maybe the bridge, those components. I've got a team of devs that works on some software that does encrypted chat storage, those pieces. Having a bridge would be cool because we could plug it into our stuff, but having it be modular in that way, right? But I would also just, like, if we break everything up, it's going to be a bit of a rough road, I think.
Yeah, and as I said to you, like my number one thing with all this is we need to move forward. We need to move forward as a community. We want to support people's ideas for new products, new ideas, new applications, new approaches for doing things. And again, that doesn't mean that we don't go back in time and re-implement things, refactor things. I think that's something we certainly should always be evaluating, but not at the expense of moving forward, especially when a piece of software is known to work pretty well. So that's just kind of like, I mean, this is a very common challenge in startups. Like you could spend an unlimited amount of time in any startup refactoring existing products, but is that going to win you new deals, new integrations, new opportunities out there, the answer is like very well no. In some cases, it's yes. Like if you're refactoring to improve performance or improve reliability, then in some cases the answer is yes. But in many cases, like the answer is no. Like, okay, yeah, the way it was implemented may not be the most elegant way that for it to be implemented, but look, man, it works. So like let's just focus on the fact that it works and let's move on. So but these are the kinds of things that like I think the council needs to come together and put their heads around and obviously work very closely with the whole community to discuss and debate these kinds of things. Like I'm very proud and honored to have a voice around here, but I am one voice. And Simon is a voice, and Sean is a voice, and Fox is a voice, and we're all voices here. We all have a point, an opinion, and I think that the dream state here is that we form a council where people have strong opinions, but are also willing to come together and find common ground with their other council members, and ultimately that's how the project moves forward. And I think that's really going to be about the personalities that are on the council and how the council operates. These are the kinds of things that are going to really be very important so that the project doesn't get just caught in mire of disagreements and then it stagnates. I want us to be like a model of how different people from different walks of life are able to come together and really work on something that achieves true greatness out there in the world. And all these sorts of decisions are going to be important in terms of how we achieve that goal together.
Yeah, and I don't actually know of any um, beautiful, easy to use, complex software that is open source. It's nearly always, you sacrifice that. It's the whole trade off between being able to control all of the pieces and like Apple produce something beautiful or have something that works, but, doesn't look very good. But I agree. Um, Anyone else have? I'm just looking, sorry, I'm looking for speakers here because no one yet. So another suggestion, this is a little controversial. I don't expect us to decide it here. But one of the issues we have as a community is that a lot of the new guard uh, is, and it's not on X, and it's on places like TikTok and Instagram, but it's also on Discord. So one proposal is to move XSpace hosting to Discord and focus on Discord growth to tap that community that otherwise we are missing as a protocol.
I
Sarah, can
love
you
this
repeat
idea.
that? You cut off a little bit for me.
Uh, so, uh, so this is a proposal around community growth. One of the demographics we need to grow is the Gen Z demographic, which they are on TikTok and Instagram, but they're also on Discord. But we don't focus on Discord as a growth channel at all at the moment. And Discord offers live streaming. We could host our spaces on Discord and better tap into that demographic through a channel we already use, rather than so the proposal might be to move our spaces to Discord and try to grow them there.
I mean, look, I think that um, where these spaces are hosted, what I would suggest we do as a community there, and this is just an idea, is just to say, well, I don't think like just moving something to another platform automatically creates growth, right? Like functionally, like of course you could just move it to Discord, but is that going to immediately like create growth? um Maybe the answer is yes, and we could certainly test it. We could like just say, okay, next week we're going to do it on Discord. Like that costs us nothing as a community. We could just do it and see what happens. um but I think what needs to actually happen is to really think about what is the engagement strategy for other groups of people in other walks of life. um, I don't know that like a generic Discord user who's like playing Roblox or playing League of Legends or whatever the heck they're playing, on from a gaming standpoint. Obviously, Discord is more than just gaming, but Like, is there a reason for them to care about Tari at all? Is like an open question, right? Is there a reason for people like on TikTok to like randomly care about Tari? And what is the narrative? What is the story? What is the call to action? Like, what is the reason why, right? And I think that like my general view is, Tari is a protocol that solves a very particular set of problems, right? It's a protocol for moving value around the internet seamlessly. It's a protocol that is pro freedom and supports people's ability to have default confidentiality around the movement of value, around their identity, on the internet, and that's basically what this protocol does. And so my general view is like, well, okay, that's what the protocol does. The protocol is sort of foundational in nature. You can build a very wide range of things that make use of the protocol, and I think it's really about the things that are built on top of Tari that may resonate with different audiences. And that should be the focus. I think it's kind of like a antiquated way of thinking, to say that like the general person is going to care about a crypto token, and oh, we're going to get normies, we're going to get retail to come in and like buy a token. I think there's like a lot of competition. Like, now you're competing against everything from prediction markets to sports betting to like buying Nvidia stock on Robinhood. Like, okay, you're competing with all these different things for people to buy, and like, well, why are people buying the thing? I think what's healthier is to kind of approach more like people who just want to build things and they're trying to solve a problem, and Tari solves the problem for them, and we're doing our very best to articulate that out there in the world. And by virtue of that happening, it sort of organically creates more demand for Tari and more interest in Tari overall, and that's inclusive of the token. So I think it's more about like, getting to first principles on quote unquote user acquisition, and not just like thinking about like platform first. I think it's more about like psychology first. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Thank you. We have a
And
couple new
Um,
speakers.
I
yeah,
oh, I was just gonna throw in a few things there. I think there's actually three separate things that are coming out of this rather than just one. I think the difficulty is in that conflation. So I think if we're just looking at the spaces, I think the Discord is a much better platform for that. It's more reliable. It's easier for people to join without having to like. I mean, X is kind of a pain in the ass right now. It's continued to be a pain in the ass. It continues to rug us. And I would rather have something that's a little bit more stable and a little bit easier to work with. So on that front, I think the spaces are actually better suited for Discord. The second thing is, marketing and how we get people to know about uh, the project and how we, find our audience, right? And I feel that that's a separate question than necessarily Discord as a tool that can be a tool there. But the third question is, okay, how do we manage the community? And I think between the forums and the Discord, we have some pretty good tools there. Uh, like I know people think about Discord a lot of the times as being like the gaming uh, chat service, but I got to tell you, the majority of the time when I want to go learn a new programming tool, their community is on Discord. I've got half of my little servers on the sidebar. Well, maybe not half. I think half. Most of them are artists because of my other work, but a large chunk of the servers that I'm a part of on Discord are communities of developers that are working on a specific project, and that's just kind of where everyone went instead of IRC. Like everyone jumped from IRC to Discord because it was the best slide-in replacement for just generally people coming on and hacking with you together on something. Um, that may not be obvious if you just haven't done it yet, but it's a thing. It's a big thing.
I agree with that. And as I said, like maybe just being on Discord is better objectively for the points you raised. And look, it costs us nothing to do it. So like we should just try it out. I was just making a broader point that simply moving to Discord may not actually cause growth, just by
100%.
itself.
Yeah, it will not be in isolation the cure to our ills in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah. I
marketing.
mean, exactly.
We're
It,
going to
it
need a
needs to be
LARP strategy.
it needs to be paired with another strategy, right? Like it needs to be paired with like, okay, well, we're gonna go and have a strategy of like, here's a list of Discord servers, and we're gonna go and like inform people about Tari and all these Discord servers. Like we're gonna go and do outreach within Discord. We're gonna do all these various things to try to like build the number of people that come in and listen to our space. And like the space can evolve too. Like we've had generalized conversations about AI. We've had philosophical conversations, many kinds of philosophical conversations here. That's another thing is like the space doesn't just have to be minutia related to Tari. We have a bunch of really, really talented, really freaking smart people here who have like well-founded opinions on things, and maybe that becomes a part of the Tari show as well. Is like we're addressing things that are happening like broadly in the world. And being very careful. Like we're apolitical here. Like that's like very important. To Tari. Like we're not here to take like sides on especially political oriented issues, but we are here to like fight for freedom for all, and we are here to fight for people having the ability to make a decision on whether they want to share their personal information or not. That should be a person's choice by default. Like we are here to fight for things like that because that's ultimately what Tari stands for.
Here, here. I'd like to just recognize we have a couple new voices. Want to give them a chance to speak. I'm not sure which one of you put your hand up first, but DHC, hello.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
How are you? Welcome.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Naveen, but there was a de-anonymization attack on Mimblewimble when Grin first came out, and so I was wondering if the same could be done to Tari.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I seem to remember some of the details around the de-anonymization issue around Grin from back in the day. I don't remember exactly how that all played out and whether that was actually found to be true or not. Do you have data that indicates that that actually like played out?
Yes. So there was this Discord user on. I think his name was like Kinkinju or something. I think you mentioned him.
Yeah.
He was the one who made me aware of this, and there was like a detailed article that talked about it. But basically, I think the way it worked was there was some kind of listener node that got the transactions before, like I guess in the mempool, and then it was just able to like de-anonymize everything.
So I don't know that that's true. Like I think that in the construction of Mimblewimble, you can certainly have listener nodes that aggregate like transaction data, like based on the structure of Mimblewimble. But I don't think that directly relates to like full blown de-anonymization.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you have to look at it from this perspective. You have to say like, okay, what is the information that's actually available to a node? And I'm not going to sit here and say like I think it's pretty well known fact that a Mimblewimble architecture doesn't have quite the same level of privacy guarantees as the current like Monero architecture, for example, or for example, say like Zcash. When someone's actually using like Z addresses, I think that's like kind of relatively well established, so there's no reason to litigate that. But I'm not convinced, and I would have to do some research, which I think like both I will do, and I think the council should also do around. Okay, yeah, what are the vectors here? And like, okay, if someone is running a listener node on the Tari network, like what does that actually give them? And then is that sufficient to like fully de-anonymize transactions?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good way to go about to see if this is actually true. There was something else I wanted to talk about. So when the layer 2 comes out and there's applications built on top of it, are we going to be able to access these applications from Tar Universe?
Yeah, so very, very good question. You know, as it stands today, that's sort of like something I think we need to like think about from a like Tari Labs point of view. The challenge with Tari Universe is like who is monitoring that? Who is deciding like which applications get placed within Tari Universe? And one of the things that I want to kind of like try to avoid to the best of our ability is putting Tari Labs in a position where it's like, okay, well, we're going to go and fill out a form, with Tari Labs, and we're going to get our app, kind of like set up within Tari Universe. The benefit of doing that obviously is, you create some reach for, application developers. Like that was one of the core visions of Tari Universe, from the very beginning, right? But I think the world has like changed. The world is changing so fast. Is it really humans who are using these things, or is it their agents? How do agents discover things? How do people discover things now? Like when I want to discover something new, I send a swarm of agents out there. I have agents that are scraping Twitter. I have agents that are scraping Reddit. I have agents that are scraping the web, and like discovering stuff for me all the time. Is it really like human led? Like, is that really how it's going to work? Do we expect humans to be like loading up this application and seeing like new tablets appear within the interface, or is discovery changing? And so those are some of like the bigger topics I think we all just need to be like discussing here to say like, okay, how does discovery even happen for these tablets? How does the Tari community rally around developers that are choosing to develop in this ecosystem? How are we celebrating them? How are we lionizing them and doing everything in our goddamn power to ensure that they're successful? And does that mean that like placing them visually in a GUI in Tari universe is the answer, or are there other things that we should be doing collectively?
Well,
I
that's
mean,
something to think about. And I think for me, when it comes to money, I don't think I'm going to let my AI agent control anything, perhaps other things. Um, but, and we can kind of see that in the broader industry too, right? Like we do have AIs like trading the stock market, but at the end of the day, it's like a human controlling these. And I don't see why it wouldn't be the same for Atari or interacting with it.
I think you're bringing up a very good point. I think that everyone's answer to this particular question of what rights and access do you give agents is sort of like a big open question, right? And I think there's a spectrum. I think there are people who are going to be hyper cavalier and like kind of YOLO, and then there's going to be people who are really buttoned up in terms of their OPSEC, and they're going to say no. No, agents are not allowed to sign transactions on my behalf. I, as a human, am going to sign the transactions, and that's just how I'm going to operate. And the thing that I know is that even if it's creating a security risk for people, human beings tend to do what is more convenient for them, right? And even if it's like to their, really to their disadvantage to do so. Um, and so on that basis, I think that's also something for us to think about is to say, okay, there's going to be an audience of people out there who care deeply about operational security and process and don't want to YOLO. But man, there's going to be like a really large group of people out there that just just want to like YOLO and just like our job is to remove friction. We want to remove friction in every last way we possibly can. That's our agenda together, is to remove friction because reducing friction results in higher conversion. And there's a tension there. There's like a very deep tension there, and that's also something I think we just need to acknowledge.
So I think this is kind of like this is really more of a UX and product design question. And I feel like, I mean, the idea that really sold me on Tari Universe was the tablets in Tari Universe, personally. That was the thing that was exciting to me, the idea that there would be a platform to deploy to that I could know it would work. But I think that if what I'm hearing from uh, Possum or Simon is that there's some difficulties in making it happen the way it had originally been envisioned. and I also hearing that there's some concern that it may not be very forward-looking. And I think really we just kind of need to sit down and design something that's a little bit more flexible, but could potentially do something like that installation in the app thing. And so something that comes to mind personally is if actually yeah. So imagine we were to take Tari Universe and we broke out the miner, but we had like a one button you could click to kind of install the miner app and connect it to the wallet, right? Suddenly you still kind of have your one-click mining, but it's a separate package altogether. So that makes it a major improvement. But we could also have like the Tari app runner, and that could be something where you give it like you can have like you have your website where you're advertising your app. You click a button that says run in Tari Universe or whatever, run in the app runner, and then you click it, and it launches up in the sandboxed environment of the app runner, and then it has access via API to the wallet, but can't directly transact the wallet without your permission saying yes or no. And you can turn it into YOLO mode to where all the transactions are just approved if you really want to do that. But that would be like a setting in the wallet.
Yeah. 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 So I agree with you. It's subject and worthy of like more discussion. Go ahead, Sean.
Actually, I was going to invite Zachary Levy, who has
Oh yeah, go ahead,
had his
Zachary.
hand up for quite a while.
Go
Hi,
ahead, Zachary.
everybody. This is my first time actually speaking in the community about anything, but I've been following the project for a long time since I don't know when that first talk that Ricardo gave, where he was sort of announcing it. I think that was the public announcement at least, but I've been following it since then. So I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something like that. Sort of just like hands off. Did some mining when it first launched and all that, but I had some my interest has been I've been thinking about building some apps on the L2 when it launches. Nothing really serious at this point, just as a way of getting more sort of evaluating if I wanted to do something more serious with it in the future. But I just sort of had some questions about the direction that Tari's going at this point. It seems like it seems like the L2 is getting ready to go and things are sort of, you guys are like figuring out more of the long-term organization and all of that. And I hear a lot of discussions about organization and things like that. So I don't know. My first question just is this even the right place for me to ask these questions? Because I'm not really trying to influence. I'm not really trying to like influence the direction of anything. So I hope this doesn't come off like I'm, trying to push or saying that I don't think you guys should be doing what you're doing. But yeah, is this the right place for me to ask those questions, or should I DM somebody or what?
No. So
No,
first of
this is absolutely the place.
yeah, first of all, welcome to the space, and thank you so much for being a part of the community for such a long time. Really appreciate you being here, and this is 100% the right place for you to ask like any questions you may have.
Okay, cool. So, my first question, real quick, I don't know if this has been addressed or if this is like something that is not supposed to be addressed, but what happened to Ricardo?
Um, well, I'll answer for your benefit and, frankly for other people's benefit too, but Ricardo did some like super low integrity shit. Like just to be direct about it, like he really like took advantage of the community. Um, you know, uh he's a grifter. Um, I think you can like probably read between the lines based on the language I'm using. But he is now persona non grata here.
Okay, yeah, that would have been just like for me, that would have been nice to have some sort of announcement about that because that was kind of a sudden shift that maybe there wasn't, I just missed it, but it was like he just sort of did
Well,
yeah.
It was brought up a
yes.
couple of times in the spaces previous,
Okay.
but that there
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like a
yeah.
big
So
written announcement
But I mean, like he was
specifically.
obviously a huge deal in the project, so I'm not judging one way or the other. I have no idea what's going on with any of that, but it just that would have been nice
yeah,
to. That was a big change.
it is a big change, and I agree with you on that. I think the challenge that, and this is just me. I know there are other people in the community who disagree with the approach that, and I'll own it, that like I've taken with this, but the facts and circumstances are really like horrific, and like you know anything that exists out there from a legal perspective against Ricardo you know, like let's just say that I've changed my opinion on those things, you know, you know, against Ricardo, based on like what I've seen him like do firsthand, here in the Tari ecosystem. And so, you know, on that basis, my fear was that if we came out there like guns swinging, guns blazing, and like swinging, then it only hurts the project because you know, it's like I need to like put my feelings aside, and kind of like focus on what's right for the project. Um, and so the decision tree there was, well, do I come out and like make some statement about it and, you know, like Zach XPT this thing, or do we kind of just like put out an announcement that says that he's stepping away, he's no longer a part of it, and you know, just like move on, knowing full well that like he doesn't own any tokens unless he's bought some, which is fine. Like if he wants to mine or buy, like anyone can do that, but he's completely cut out from the like team allocation of tokens from the pre-mine. He's like not a part of the business like in any way, shape, or form. Like he's not involved. It's sort of like he never existed, from a Tari Labs point of view. Um, and that's that there's a tension there too, you know, like because like obviously people want to know. I've done my best to use language that allows people to probably read between the lines without you know creating a world where we're just like I think creating like you know perceptual challenges for the project going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, these obviously those huge drama. You see it a lot in all of these crypto projects, and that would definitely not be good. So I get where you're coming from. I must have just missed. I saw one thing on like his X page about that he was stepping away. That was the only thing I saw, and I was like, what is going on here? Because yeah, he was
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, look, you know, I've known the dude for a really, really, really long time. You know, like, you know, when he was arrested here in Nashville, like, who do you think helped him find his attorney, and who do you think was like sending him money for like commissary purchases when he was in jail? Like, you know, that's me. You know, I was doing so much to take care of this dude, and you know, he's not taking care of us. He's not taking care of anyone here.
all right, all right.
You know, he's only taking advantage of my trust, and so that's kind of where I sit with the whole thing.
Okay, that definitely answers that question. So thank you for that. But I had a so from there, like he obviously, I mean, you and Naveen and Ricardo are obviously like the two big voices of the project. And so my next sort of question is, I understand it sounds like the overwhelming consensus in the community is like you want to sort of have this be largely a leaderless type thing at this point. Like Naveen, you would be the, at least from a public perspective, from my perspective as someone who's not involved in you know, even the development of Tari or anything like that, or a lot of the conversations that are going on, like you're the obvious sort of face of the project. And um, it seems to me that Tari is like not at a point where it's ready to not have strong leadership in terms of trying to do this like community consensus. Like we'll get a commit here and there from this guy and this guy. Or I know you have Tari Labs and like in terms of the contributors, and I don't know what the deal is with who actually has merge authority and all this, but like you know, when you look at most of these projects, whether it's open source or proprietary or nonprofit or for profit or whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, Generally, when you get to the point where you're like, we're just going to have like 1,000 people working on this one thing, and like there's not really a strong head, and we don't have, it's like that's at the point where the project is stagnating effectively. In my opinion, like that should never happen. But if it is going to happen, it's usually when it's like, you know, we're like basically gotten this thing to the point where we're going to get it, and we're just sort of doing all this extra stuff. So again, I'm not trying to I'm mostly just like trying to get what your thoughts are on that, or what anybody's thoughts are on that, of like, are you looking at this as some sort of balance, or do you just completely disagree with my position there that you know, you do need a strong leadership, strong core at a project that's this young. I heard in even one of the other spaces, someone was talking about this idea of the core apps, and he got some pushback of like, we're just going to have like the community, everyone in the community, just making whatever apps they want, which obviously like is the goal. I get that. And that's even what my own interest is. So, but I do also think that, I'm not gonna like just come out one day and like make a super huge app, because I'm not even gonna invest the time into that. So there needs to be, it just seems like I'm rambling on about it a bit now, but it's like it seems like the project, in my view, it seems like the project is at a state where it still needs like a pretty strong leadership who can sort of like say, this is the direction we're going in. And I wanted to know if you guys are like looking at that balance of, are you sort of trying to get into this like ideal community consensus like everyone's doing, or everyone's making their own thing? But even on the core protocol itself is what I'm asking about too. So yeah, what's everybody's thoughts on that?
So I feel like this is a little bit of a false dichotomy. Um, the reason being that the image in your mind of like everyone just doing their own thing is not how well-run community projects actually work. There usually is a group of people that are kind of at the middle, that are like the tight group of people that are helping drive and lead the project. Sometimes there's a figurehead at the top of this, but even people who, even in projects where there is a quote unquote benevolent dictator for life, they have their inner circle that kind of they make decisions with. And what we are really trying to do is still make a fairly central circle that can help drive project direction and make big decisions, but to free up the community to make contributions in that space and to make most of the momentum from people who are volunteering and going from that way. So the idea of the Tari Council is that there is still people making like larger product decisions, who are making project direction, uh, movements, that sort of thing. Not having it to where it's totally diffuse responsibility, where no one has any idea where the project is going and everyone's just doing their own thing. There are plenty of projects that have run with sort of core council elements that launch anyway. For instance, I don't know who started Firefox, right? I don't know who started that project, but it made it out there and it became a very large browser. I don't know who started. I mean, there's lots of projects, lots of stuff that you use day to day, and they might have a leader who has started them, and they keep going with that immediate leader, or they transition to a council. And we're kind of transitioning to a council now. But the whole idea is you never want a project to have nobody at the helm, right? You still want people at the helm, and we're still keeping people at the helm, but we're maybe moving a little bit away from cult of personality, which is kind of what Ricardo had brought to the table originally, right? And I think that we learned a very important lesson about cult of personality, which is that your project can be massively damaged if the person who is your cult head suddenly turns out to not be the person you hoped they would be.
Yeah. What about just purely in terms of the technical side, like purely in terms of the code itself? Because on the types of projects that you're talking about, like you almost always see it's really one person basically makes the core thing. Like Linus made Linux, or like someone makes this project, and they say it's like a community thing, but you go and you actually look at the commits, and it's like pretty much one person for the vast majority of the time, and then you'll start getting a few more people coming in, or it'll switch or something like that.
There's a lot of mixed models in the free/open source software world, so I think it's important to pause. The analogy that Fox brought up, I think, is actually really important. Firefox browser started off as a fork of the Netscape browser, essentially. And the different components of Netscape Communicator, it was actually a suite of tools, right, which then became more modular. It had a browser, it had an HTML editor, it had an email client built into it. Those three things were split out into separate open source projects. The browser originally was called Phoenix, and there was a trademark issue with that, so it became Firefox. Firefox ended up eclipsing both Netscape and what was called the Mozilla Suite, which included all of the components because it was faster, lighter, but also it had a strong plugin and extension system. So when we're talking about the technical design and community governance and these kinds of things and getting people interested, one of the things that I think would be very nice is if we can try to lure developers in, quote unquote, by pushing on the SDK, the API, the bridge, these components, which will allow outside developers to plug in. That tempers, I think, the problem you're talking about, Zach, around potentially having one figurehead driving things. And I will tell you, the Linux kernel is extremely atypical for most open source projects.
I just want to be clear. I'm not really actually as concerned about the figurehead, like the public face of it thing. Like a lot of times you would think that might be the same thing, but I'm more actually concerned about the technical side of it, like the technical leadership, the code itself.
Yeah.
The example that you're giving is actually kind of what I'm talking about. Like, you see that a lot of times. Like a lot of open source projects are either they're a copy of a project that's already been made, but they're making it open source, or they're a fork. And like Tari, I mean, Tari has a lot of components, obviously, that it's taking from other stuff that it's sort of just putting together. But it's not just a fork. It's not like one of these old school. You'd have, people would just fork Bitcoin and like make some tiny change to it, and then that would be that. Like there's, you have to have. There's not that many people that can work on like the core architecture of something. So my question is, are you expecting the majority of or a significant portion of the core architecture of Tari going forward to be written by just volunteer contributors that are, or is the expectation that there
Oh,
is?
okay. I see the
Yeah.
question now. There actually are specific developers who are really in charge of large portions of the project that understand it very, very well.
Can I make
And
a
that's
point
not going
here?
away.
Just perhaps nearly all of the protocol is made from open source components. It's one of the geniuses of the protocol is it isn't actually built on any um, great inventions that were made at Tari Labs. It's just very, very wise combination of components that uh, are quite standard and ordinary. And you should just go look at how many commits uh, Rick has actually contributed to the project to assure yourself that he was not a main contributor at all.
Yeah. Sorry, these two things are like somewhat separate. I think they
Yeah,
got a bit
sorry,
confused.
I was gonna say, we have Stan, for instance, who is basically in charge of the L2, right? He's the one who's been implementing the L2. We have Brian, who's been in charge of Universe. So we have several team members who are really in charge of the components that they're leading and who are the experts in that area. And I expect that to continue. And I expect there to always be someone who is like a major person who's involved in that. It's kind of there is a function in development communities where there is someone who tends to become the de facto technical leader over time, whether or not you intend that to be that way. And that happens no matter what open source project you're on. There usually tend to be a few people who end up taking technical leadership because they care about the project. They float to the top either naturally through over time community changes, or in this initial time we have Tari Labs basically sponsoring these initial developers who have I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn here, Navi. Maybe you know a little bit more of the history than I do, but who are now in charge of this project and care about this project and want to see it move forward. And that technical leadership will remain.
And are they still, this might be, you can stop me at any point if I'm getting into things that, no, someone doesn't want to talk about or isn't allowed to talk about, whatever, but are those core people who are leading like the core protocol or who are leading Universe or whatever, are they still like full-time employees of Tari Labs, or are they also just, they've just stuck with it as a volunteer at this point?
Yeah. So a few things. So several of those people are still employed full time at Tari Labs, and will continue to be employed at Tari Labs. So that's one answer to your question. Um, Second answer to your question is, um, I also just think the world is changing. You have many very celebrated computer scientists out there who are, using agents to build like very, very complex software. I'm close friends with Wes McKinney here in Nashville. Wes is the creator of Pandas, which anyone who's a data scientist probably uses stuff that Wes has contributed very meaningfully to. Very, very talented programmer, very talented engineer, very talented leader. He's like rock star on all levels. And like if you were to have a conversation with him today, he'd be like, yeah, I mean, is he hand coding some stuff? The answer is probably true, yes, but probably yes. But is the majority of his output today, led by his agents? The answer is like 100% yes. So I just think like the nature of the world is changing. Like I think you used to need to have like sort of like brilliant level technical acumen and leadership associated with these kinds of projects, front to back, in order to bring them to life. If I was starting Tari Labs over again today, would I take the exact same approach that we took with Tari Labs 8 years ago? The answer is no. 100% no. Like I would not take the same approach. Would I still want to collaborate with very strong technical minds? The answer is yes. Um, would I want every line of code to be handwritten, as it was 8 years ago? The answer is no. Would I want there to be more community involvement from people who, maybe understand other aspects of these kinds of systems? The answer is yes. Would I fully expect that people are weaponizing agents, across the board? The answer is yes. So I just think that like, and I also think it's very important to note that as time goes on, these tools are only going to get better. Like they're not going to get worse, they're only going to get better. So I think that the project has a very strong group of very strong technical minds, who exist around the project, both from a historical perspective, but also from a community perspective. I would point to people like Fox, and I would point to people like Sean and people like other people in the community who are very strong technically, have a very strong foundation in how this technology works, but are not a part of like the Tari Labs machine. And then there are people who are very involved in the project who are still a part of the Tari Labs machine. And that's totally fine. I think that's like great that both of those things exist. So yeah, does that help answer your question?
Yeah, mostly. I think you guys have mostly answered my question. So just to clarify, you see a substantial and increasing amount of this, which is like affect. I think you were sort of talking about this earlier in this space of like, different groups. Some are like running agents that are like doing more and more of the work on the development of Tari, um and that sort of increases over time, and like, would all of that be reviewed for now, or would that stop at some point, that eventually you don't even see necessarily 100% of the code that's written by coding agents being reviewed?
I
um
would I
yeah.
would like put a layer of refinement on something that Naveen said. I would say that f- as the example he gave of the author of Pandas is a excellent top tier engineer, and I believe we have top talent in this community. So even when I am hesitant to use projects, code projects that are LLM generated, that don't have a technical mind at the helm that's very sharp, because they do still provide a lot of uh, massaging and cleaning up and refining of whatever code is generated. And I expect that to be the case for the foreseeable future. My expectation is, eventually maybe AI generated code will be so good we don't even have to look at it, but that's not here today. And I am not so sure that we can count on it being available at any particular time. So I just would say that for the foreseeable future, for the time that we have, that we can immediately see, we're going to expect there to be strong technical leadership, and whether they choose to use LLMs or not, or how they choose to use them, is going to be up to their particular style. And we'll still be seeing a lot of that, I imagine, because I know that it's very heavily used in the community.
Yeah, first of all like really want to appreciate Fox's point and just double down on it. I think he's 100% right. That you don't want to just like YOLO LLM derived code, especially when something is like a financial product or financial protocol like Tari. Like people are trusting Tari as a protocol to secure, hopefully one day, many, many billions, hopefully tens of billions of dollars worth of value. So I think that's like a very important thing to acknowledge, and say that like, hey, we need to be very, very careful and thoughtful about how we implement things around here, and how as a community we're all working like super hard to keep each other safe. So I completely agree with Fox's point. I don't want there to be a suggestion that I'm just like, oh yeah, we're gonna start YOLOing around here, and yeah, whatever Claude says is what Tari does. I think that'd be certainly a big mistake. But I do think that the value of these tools is ever increasing. I do think the capability of these tools is ever increasing. I do think that we would be foolish in the community to not embrace these tools and to make use of them in every way we possibly can. I also want to acknowledge, many members of the community who've used these tools to secure bounties within the project, which I think also speaks to the potential and the capability and the opportunity of these tools, because people are going to direct their agents in different ways, and using agents is a skill. It's not just like telling an agent to go build this. It's how you direct them, how you leverage them is 100% a skill, and people are going to use them at varying degrees, to the benefit of the project, and obviously to the benefit of themselves.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have.
If I could step
Thank
in
you
real
so
quickly
much for
to
coming up here and asking such great questions. So really appreciate you spending the time with us, and participating.
Yeah, thank you, Naveen. I second that, of course. And Zachary, I think the questions you ask are on everybody's mind. I just wanted to add a little color from my perspective. So Naveen asked me earlier what I've been up to, and I kind of just glossed over it the way people tend to do. But one of the things I've been working on is software supply chain, secure software supply chain, delivery of apps via, what we would traditionally call an app store or something like that. I could see something like Tari Universe becoming, the universe for Tari, right? And in a way where we had sort of a selection of applications delivered through an interface which had sandboxing, et cetera, and then users made choices about how they wanted to use or what they wanted to use, et cetera, et cetera. And when we're talking about AI agents interacting with that kind of software, the rules can be set, right? We don't have to have a situation where people are going to be worried that they're going to be exposed to AI if they don't want to be, right? So, there are a lot of different ways for that to go. The other thing I would say about it is, the security, the vulnerability disclosures that are coming through from things like Claude Mythos and so on. Obviously, the Zcash folks, just had a big disclosure. That stuff is a big deal, and those tools are very good at finding vulnerabilities that humans would definitely not find. I have now, though, triaged a number of those reports myself, for some small organizations and some sort of medium to large organizations. And I will tell you, close to 60 to 70% of the items in those reports are either false positives or very context specific. So we don't have to worry about doomsday from the AI either finding bugs. And we should be very happy that they're finding critical vulnerabilities that humans would never find. So in those reports, if there's 2 or 3 items which need to be patched immediately, then they do, right? And if there's a handful of items that, aren't immediate but need to be fixed, then they can get fixed on the timeline, be discussed by the core devs and so on. And, having the Tari Labs folks and that core group of developers able to do that for this project is a big deal and very typical of open source projects, right? Typically, so-called drive-by contributions on an open source project are only somewhere between, on the high end, 10 to 15% of the contributions. And then those folks don't last on a 1 to 3 year timeline, let alone a 5-year timeline if we were to look out that far. So if we're talking about sustainability, you definitely need to have that core. And if that core has, individuals who are getting money as well. They aren't just volunteers, or there's some kind of bounty system, et cetera, which is both things are true here. It's a very healthy thing for a project, and it's a really good model. And then just sort of the last thing I want to sort of hammer home from my perspective, I wouldn't be here talking right now if I didn't think that there was a lot of energy and that this project was not only sustainable but extremely interesting, right? What Tari has the potential to do and potential to do going forward can be much more than just thinking about where we've been. And I think that really sky's the limit if we push this thing hard. So, yeah, thank you for being here and thank you for the questions.
I want to acknowledge that we're now over time on our space. And so we're going to end things today here, but just really want to give a huge shout out to everyone who participated today. Sean, Fox, Simon, DHC, Zachary. Thank you guys so much for participating in our space today. I think we have a very, very special community around this project. This project quite literally exists because of you guys and everyone else who's choosing to listen and participate in this thing. So I'm very grateful for everyone's support and participation. We will continue next week. Hopefully, the council is fully decided upon going into next week. That's a personal goal of mine. We'll see how far we get with that, but that is something that we're also working on very hard behind the scenes at Tari Labs. And the goal being, of course, to construct a group of people that first and foremost genuinely give a crap about this thing that we all care about, called Tari. Number one. Number two, all are highly motivated to help move the project forward and are willing to actually move mountains to help move the project forward in their own ways. And three, are people who are willing to come together. And in some cases, that may mean disagreeing and committing. Like sometimes it may not be like unilateral consensus. But I think that's like also very, very important. And people who are like open-minded, like willing to hear other people's perspective. And learn from other people. I would like to think that like I'm a human being. I'm imperfect, just like every other human being on earth. But I learned so much from everyone here, and really truly just want the very best for the project. I that's my only like dog in the race, is really to like do everything I can personally as a human to make Tari wildly successful. And I'm very excited to partner closely with the council and with everyone in this community to make that happen. So, with that, thank you again for participating in our space. We will be here next Tuesday to continue the conversation together. To continue the conversation together.
I fluffed the music. Sorry. I fluffed the music. Sorry.